So imagine for a second that you are standing on a street corner in Kampala, Uganda. It's February 2026.
Right. The heat is humming.
Exactly. The traffic is just weaving all around you. Bodas are honking, but there is this really distinct, I don't know, electric charge in the air.
It's not just the humidity.
No, it's a vibe of absolute celebration. People are graduating, holidays are happening, and naturally, people are looking for a drink to toast the occasion.
It is a fascinating setting for our deep dive into the source material today. Usually when we try to understand a city's economy or its pulse, we look at the boring stuff. We look at stock markets, GDP, maybe infrastructure spending.
Yeah, the usual metrics.
But today we are taking a very different route. We're ignoring the macro government statistics for a bit, and we're looking directly at the receipts.
We're looking at what people are actually buying when they want to celebrate. We've got our hands on a really specific, incredibly detailed data analysis report by Edward Boger.
And this report is based on the actual sales activity of a freelance salesman, Edward Dembe.
Right, a guy operating right in the heart of the action, which is Kampala's central business district, specifically during that high-energy month of February 2026.
And this is why we do these deep dives. We aren't just reading you a shopping list. We are trying to unpack the sociology behind those sales.
What were people drinking? How are they paying for it?
Exactly. And what do those specific patterns tell us about the economy of the city during a month of such high activity?
Before we really crack open the data, so to speak, we do need to drop a quick disclaimer for you because, as we know, data can be tricky if you don't frame it right.
Context is absolutely everything here. The numbers we are discussing today represent a specific cohort of clients.
Distributors, bars, retail chains, and mobile stockists.
Right, the specific network that this salesman, Edward Dembe, dealt with. So this isn't a national census of every single bottle sold in the entire nation of Uganda?
No, it's a snapshot. It's a slice of life from the central business district.
But what a slice it is.
Seriously, I was looking through these brand names and just the sheer volume of data, and honestly, the vibe of the numbers is intense. You have everything from ultra-premium champagne to mass-market sweet wine.
It feels like a real cross-section of society.
It really does. It's a study in contrasts.
And to really understand the numbers, you have to understand the moment. Why was February 2026 so incredibly busy?
Because the report makes it very clear that this wasn't just a standard month. Buying momentum was completely through the roof.
Let's unpack the drivers for that. Because if you're a salesman in Kampala, February suddenly looks like a gold rush. What's actually happening on the ground?
Well, there are two main factors here. First, you have Janani Luum Day.
Right, which is a major public holiday.
Exactly. That gets people out of the office, gets them into the bars, relaxing. But the bigger factor, the real engine of consumption here, is graduation season.
And we really need to emphasize that we aren't just talking about, a polite dinner with parents and a quick handshake.
Far from it. In Uganda, and specifically in Kampala, graduations are massive, massive community events.
A university degree, there's often a family investment. Sometimes it's literally an entire village's investment.
But when that pays off, the celebration is huge. We are talking extended families, huge parties, massive tents set up in the yard.
And that level of celebration requires volume.
So you have this double whammy of events, a national holiday and a massive cultural celebration season that naturally demand a toast.
And the data shows this perfectly. There's this massive surge in demand for premium spirits, specifically whiskeys, across both the on-trade and off-trade channels.
On-trade being your bars and restaurants, and off-trade being your liquor stores and supermarkets.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, a little frustrating if you were a customer trying to buy a high-end drink in Kampala that month.
Oh, the ghost list.
The ghost list. The report highlights a market insight section that is basically just a list of missed economic connections.
I was reading this part and just thinking, man, people really wanted to spend serious money and they literally couldn't do it.
Because despite the incredibly high demand, several top-tier global brands were just consistently out of stock. The supply chain completely failed to keep up with the party.
Let's name some names here because this list is fancy. These are not obscure, hard-to-find niche brands. Clients had these top of mind, but the shelves were empty.
What were they looking for?
Zone and Prosecco, for one. Glenlivet, both the 12 and the 15-year. And the Macallan. We are talking the 12, 15, and the 18-year-old single malt.
Just gone.
Completely unavailable. And it wasn't just single malts. Johnny Walker Green Label and Double Black were missing.
And for the champagne lovers out there, Veuve Clicquot, both the Brut and the Rich, was largely unavailable too.
What does that tell you about the market? You have customers waving cash, wanting a Macallan 18, which is not a cheap bottle by any stretch of the imagination, and the supply chain just blinked.
It highlights a severe rigidity in the logistics. Importing premium spirits into a landlocked country like Uganda involves really complex lead times, heavy taxes, and major distribution hurdles.
And graduation happens every year. They know it's coming.
They do, but when a spike hits even slightly harder than predicted, or if there's a minor holdup at a border crossing, the entire system breaks down.
But the report explicitly notes that this scarcity created massive opportunities for agile traders who actually did have access to alternative stock.
Precisely. It became an absolute trader's market.
If you were the one guy in the central business district holding a case of Glenlivet when the official distributor channels were totally dry,
You were king for a day. You could effectively name your price.
it's the classic economic lesson right there. Scarcity drives value. So the big distributors missed out on significant revenue, and the smaller hoarders or the quick-moving traders likely made an absolute killing.
But let's pivot to what actually was in stock, because this is where the volume versus value debate in the source material gets really wild.
Oh, the champagne paradox.
Yes, this is one of my absolute favorite parts of the data. Because in any retail analysis, you always have to look at what moves the most bottles versus what brings in the most cash.
And they are rarely the same thing.
Almost never. So let's talk about the volume kings, the heavy hitters.
If I walked into a random graduation party in Kampala in February 2026, statistically speaking, based on this report, what bottle am I seeing on almost every single table?
Without a doubt, it's Four Cousins.
The natural sweet red.
Specifically the natural sweet red. The data is just staggering on this.
I have it right here. The 1.5-liter bottle, the big Magnum, made up 6.35% of the total volume of all bottles sold in this network.
And the smaller 750 milliliter bottle was another 6.45%.
So combined, nearly 13% of every single bottle moved by the salesman was just this one brand of sweet red wine.
That is absolute undeniable market dominance.
Why the Magnum, though? Why is that huge 1.5-liter bottle so incredibly popular?
It speaks directly to the nature of the event we were just talking about. Graduations are massive community events.
Right, you aren't just buying a bottle for yourself to sip quietly in a corner.
Exactly. You are buying for a crowd. The Magnum is a communal format. It's economically efficient, and it visually says to your guests, I am providing for the party.
And right behind it, in volume, you have Old Monk Rum at 4.80% of volume, and JP Chunnet Ice Edition Pink at roughly 4%.
These are the drinks that are fueling the masses. It's functional celebration, it's accessible, it's sweet, and it gets the job done for a large group of people without breaking the bank.
But, and this is a massive but, volume isn't profit.
No, it's not.
If we switch our lens to value, the picture completely flips upside down.
And to the champagne paradox. Look at Monet and Chandon Imperial Brut.
The ultimate classic status symbol.
In terms of the actual number of bottles clinking around the city, it's tiny. It's only 1.86% of the total volume.
A tiny fraction of the warehouse space compared to all those boxes of Four Cousins.
But when you look at the total value in Ugandan shillings, it accounts for a massive 5.39% of the total money exchanged in this entire network.
That is a huge punch for a really small number of bottles. You move one crate of Moet, and it's worth a truckload of the cheaper sweet wine.
Precisely. And we see a very similar dynamic with American whiskey.
Jack Daniels.
Yes. Specifically, the 1-liter bottle of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. It represents only 2.17% of volume, but an impressive 3.45% of the total value.
So the economic tiering here is pretty stark. The mass market runs on sweet red wine and affordable rum, but the profitability, the real margin for these businesses, relies heavily on champagne and American whiskey.
It really highlights two very different economies operating within the exact same city blocks.
One is all about affordability and logistics, just moving heavy boxes of wine to the masses as efficiently as possible.
And the other is completely about aspiration and status, moving scarce, high-value boxes to the elite or to people scourging for a once-in-a-lifetime graduation.
It feels incredibly polarized. You are either buying the literal bucket of wine or you're buying the bottle of Moet. Is there really no middle class in this data?
There is, but it's definitely squeezed. We see glimpses of it, but the data really emphasizes the extremes. However, if we look at where people are actually buying their drinks, we might find that middle ground.
Okay, let's talk about the channels. The report breaks down the business types, and there are some really distinct personalities here.
It's a very diverse ecosystem. At the top of the food chain, you have the independent liquor stores.
These are the heavyweights. They commanded the highest share of the sales overall, about 19.41% of volume and a massive 21% of the value.
And what's interesting about the independent liquor stores is their range. The data shows they are moving absolutely everything.
They sell the pallets of Four Cousins, but they are also moving the high-end single malts. It's the true one-stop shop.
Then below them, you have the distributors and wholesalers. They did about 16% volume and 19% value.
But there is a really key insight from their inventory list. This specific channel moved significant amounts of Moet and Chandon.
Right, the distributor channel accounted for only 1.39% of their volume in Monet, but over 4% of their value came from that one champagne.
That suggests to me that this is where the really big private parties or maybe the smaller retailers are going to source their premium stock in bulk.
Now compare that to the liquor store chains. And we have to be clear, these are distinct from the independent stores.
And the Tier 2 supermarkets.
Exactly. The chains are moving incredibly high volume, about 17.6%, but their value retention is much lower, only 13%.
Why is that? Why are the big chains making proportionally less money per bottle?
Because they rely incredibly heavily on wine sales. They're shifting massive quantities of Four Cousins and J.P. Chenet.
Right.
They aren't moving the high-end single malts at the same rate. They are optimizing entirely for turnover, not for high margin.
And then there's the Tier 2 supermarket. These guys seem to have found that missing middle ground we were just looking for.
They really have.
Yeah.
Tier 2 supermarkets seem to be the absolute sweet spot for Jameson Irish whiskey.
Interesting.
It made up roughly 2% of their volume and 2.4% of their value. They also move a lot of Old Monk rum.
So it's a very practical mid-market selection.
Exactly. It's for the person who wants something clearly better than the cheapest sweet wine. But they aren't dropping massive cash on a Macallan 18.
But my absolute favorite category in this entire report, and I think the most uniquely Kampala category, is the mobile stockist.
Ah, yes. The mobile stockist. This category accounted for over 13% of the total volume moved.
Just the name implies so much action. I picture guys on motorcycles, bodas, weaving through really heavy traffic, crates strapped to the back.
Delivering to house parties or smaller roadside kiosks that just ran out of stock.
Yes. It feels like this hyper-agile, on-the-go economy that caters entirely to immediate urgent needs.
And that image you have is likely very accurate. They are the last-mile delivery infrastructure for the city's nightlife and parties.
And because they are reacting to immediate needs, like someone yelling that the party is dry, their inventory tells you exactly what people need right in that moment.
And what do they need?
Energy and buzz.
Exactly. The mobile stockists move a ton of Four Cousins Natural Sweet Red, nearly 10% of their entire mix, and a lot of Jameson.
It's basically the party starter pack. Fast, highly accessible, and ready to pour.
So we've established that people are drinking a lot of sweet wine in Irish whiskey. But let's zoom out a bit and look at the broader flavor profile of the city.
If Kampala had a taste in February 2026, what would it be?
Based purely on this data, sweet. Overwhelmingly sweet.
I noticed that too. If you look at the sales by grape classification chart, it's not Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon leading the chart.
Not even close. Natural Sweet Red is the absolute juggernaut here.
It accounts for over 8% of sales in the liquor store chains, and like we said, nearly 10% for those mobile stockists.
And Natural Sweet White isn't far behind. It's sitting at nearly 5% in the independent liquor stores.
Why do you think that is? Is it strictly a price thing, or is it a genuine cultural palate preference?
It is very likely a combination of both. Sweet wines are generally much more approachable for newer wine drinkers.
Right, if you're transitioning from soda or sweet beers.
Exactly. In a market where people might be transitioning to wine for celebratory status, sugar is a very popular bridge.
It doesn't have the heavy, dry tannins of a complex red.
And it's much easier to drink in the heat. Plus, frankly, for a celebration, sweetness just inherently feels like a treat.
Speaking of transitioning, let's talk about the hard stuff. If you aren't drinking sweet wine out of a Magnum, what are you drinking?
Whiskey. Without a shadow of a doubt. Whiskey is the dominant spirit category across almost all business types in the report.
We saw that with the mobile stockists, where whiskey made up 6% of their value. And in Tier 2 supermarkets, it was a solid 7% of value.
And the market is incredibly brand loyal, too.
Johnny Walker and Jameson.
The ubiquity of Johnny Walker, specifically red and black label alongside Jameson, is just undeniable. These aren't just drinks, they're cultural staples.
There isn't a lot of data here suggesting people are out there experimenting with obscure craft gins or niche mezcals. They want the big, recognized names.
They want the guarantee of status that comes with those specific labels.
I did spot one really interesting outlier in the data, though. Amidst all this heavy, sweet wine and dark whiskey, there was one beer that really stood its ground.
Corona Extra.
Yeah. It's acknowledged in the report as a specific beer and RTD item that holds its own, specifically in bars, where it's nearly 0.77% of volume, and in Tier 2 supermarkets at 0.52%.
It's a fascinating branding case study for the region. Uganda has excellent, dominant local beers, Nile Special, Bell Lager.
Really strong local loyalty.
But Corona manages to position itself completely differently. It actively avoids competing directly with the local lagers.
It positions itself alongside the spirits.
Exactly. As a premium lifestyle accessory. It's the beer you drink when you want to signal status and disposable income, but you don't necessarily want hard liquor.
Okay, so we know what they want. Sweet wine for the crowd, Irish whiskey for the core party, and maybe a Corona for the individual flex.
But here is the part of the source material that really reveals the hidden mechanics of the business. The money trail.
This is critical. The report analyzes the mode of payment across all these channels.
And that tells us everything we need to know about business trust and liquidity in the city.
And it seems like cash is still king, mostly, but definitely not everywhere.
Correct. If you look at the big liquor store chains, it is 100% cash sales. Immediate liquidity.
Same with the Tier 2 supermarkets. They're mostly cash, sitting at over 12%, with very, very little bank transfer activity.
That makes perfect logical sense. You walk into a supermarket, you physically pay for your bottle, and you leave. No manager is letting a customer take a crate of wine and promise to pay next week.
Exactly. But the distributor and wholesaler channel is a totally different beast entirely.
Completely different. There is a massive reversal in the numbers here.
In the distributor channel, nearly 13% of sales are strictly on credit. Cash is only hovering around 2.6%.
That is a staggering gap. That means the absolute top of the food chain is operating almost entirely on trust and delayed payment terms.
It suggests the supply chain that is essentially financed by credit. The wholesalers give the stock to the smaller retailers on terms, just hoping they sell it during the graduation rush.
It's an IOU economy at the highest level.
And looking back at our favorite guys, the mobile stockists, they are also super heavy on credit. Nearly 9% credit versus just 4% cash.
Which perfectly fits that agile profile we discussed earlier.
Right. These stockists might be picking up goods from a larger distributor on credit in the morning, hustling and selling them during the day at a markup, and paying the distributor back later that night.
It is a high-velocity, entirely trust-based system.
But think about the inherent risk there. It's incredibly fragile.
Very. If the consumer suddenly stops buying, say, the graduation season abruptly ends or a holiday gets rained out,
The mobile stockist can't pay the wholesaler back, and the whole chain just locks up overnight.
it paints a really vivid picture of how money physically moves through the city. The big wholesale guys and the mobile street hustlers are floating on credit, keeping the gears turning.
While the retail chains demand cold, hard cash on the barrelhead from you and me.
It creates a really fascinating tension in the market. The supply chain is highly flexible and trust-based, but the consumer end is completely rigid.
So let's wrap this up. We have taken a really deep dive into the source material covering February 2026 in Kampala.
We have seen a month totally driven by massive graduation parties and national holidays.
We have seen a ghost list of premium brands like Macallan and Veuve Clicquot that simply vanished from shelves because demand was just way too high.
And we have seen the stark dichotomy of the market.
It is simultaneously a four cousins market driven by affordable, sweet, bulk, mass market wine.
And a Moet Glenlivet market driven by high-value, status-driven aspiration.
And honestly, based on the numbers, there is very little middle ground. You're polarized. You are either buying the magnum of sweet red for the massive crowd in the yard.
Or you are furiously hunting for that rare single malt to impress the boss or the father-in-law.
And that brings us right back to that out-of-stock list.
Yeah, that is the piece of data that really sticks with me.
Think about this for a second. The total market value we analyzed today is incredibly impressive. The sheer amount of money moving through these independent channels is significant.
But how much larger would it have been if those supply chain issues were actually fixed?
If every single person who wanted a bottle of Macallan 18 or Zonin Prosecco could actually find one and buy it.
That is the multi-million shilling question right there.
Because it suggests something provocative. It suggests that the market currently isn't capped by how much money people actually have to spend.
Right. It's capped entirely by logistics.
The desire is there. The cash is literally in their hands. The bottles just aren't on the shelf.
It's a massive missed opportunity for the distributors. It means the local economy is running way hotter than the physical infrastructure can handle.
Exactly. And the first person to figure out how to keep the Glenlivet flowing without interruption during graduation season is going to unlock a staggering amount of value.
A literal fortune.
So next time you are at a graduation party in Kampala, just take a look at the main table. If you see a Magnum bottle of Four Cousins, you know you are in good company.
You're drinking with the majority.
But if you spot a bottle of Macallan 18,
Well, you know someone worked really hard and probably knew the exact right mobile trader.
To get it there.
Indeed. Respect the logistics, always. That is going to do it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious.